Hello, these are just a few words about applying for English at Oxford and particularly to Balliol. And I'm sorry I can't be there in person, though I'll be very happy to answer any questions you might have by email. So what I'm going to talk about today, just for 5 or 10 minutes, is first of all what studying English at Oxford is all about, then how you might go about choosing a college, then what English at Balliol has to offer you, and then finally some thoughts about your application, how you go about applying. And then I'll end with just a word or two about the interview, because I know that's something that often looms in people's thoughts. Okay, so English at Oxford. What's characteristic about the English course at Oxford University? Well, the course is characterised by two things, really. One is that it covers the entire spread of English literary history in English. So that's a principle that we call coverage. So you study the very, very earliest English poetry written in the 7th century, and you go all the way through to modern writing in English from across the whole English-speaking world. So you get a tremendous sense of the breadth of the subject. But also, especially in your third year, you get the chance to specialise, really in some good detail, in some particular corner of the subject. So it might be a particular author, or it might be a genre, or it might be a little sort of micro period within a larger literary period. And you will write special options, a special topic, extended essay on that sort of subject, and you'll also write a dissertation under the supervision of an expert in that area. So we think that the course is very well devised in marrying breadth on the one hand. You get a whole sense of the sweep of the subject, but also depth in particular areas of the subject. It's taught in a mixture of tutorials. A tutorial might be one tutor and 2 students, or sometimes one tutor and 1 student. And also classes of the whole year group. Those will happen in college, and as well as that there's a very extensive programme of lectures and seminars organised by the university's Central English faculty, which complement those tutorials and classes in college. So you get a very good mix of different sorts of teaching methods. And there's also a great mix in the assessment. The old days when your degree was assessed entirely upon exams at the end of your third year are no longer with us. There are exams at the end of your third year, but also you are asked to submit portfolios of coursework, an extended essay on a special subject, and, as I mentioned before, a dissertation of several thousand words on a subject in which you have become pretty expert. So that's the course. Joint schools, I'll say just briefly. Roughly speaking, you do half of the single honours English course and half of whatever else the other single honours course as part of your joint school is. So you'll do sort of half the English course and half the history course, let's say, or half the English course and half the French course. And those are the 2 joint schools that you can do at Balliol. It's also possible to do classics in English, but you'll have to go to another college if you want to do that subject. What are facilities like at Oxford for English? Well, they're pretty phenomenal. Just to start with the library provision, the Bodleian Library, which is about 5 minutes stroll away from Balliol, is the second biggest library in the United Kingdom and one of the greatest libraries in the world. It has something like 13 million items. It's probably more than that by now. It is an extraordinary resource, and it's entirely open for you to use as a matriculated student of the university. So a great resource. The English Faculty Library, which is bespoke for the English faculty's needs, is about a 10-minute walk from Balliol. It's got about 110 or 120,000 books, DVDs, all sorts of other bits and pieces. It's a lending library, so you can take the books away and use them in your rooms. It's a fantastic resource, as indeed is the college's own library, which of course is 0 minutes walk from Balliol. It's a large library with extremely good holdings in the humanities, including English, and actually also with very, very good what we call special collections, so historic collections, manuscripts and old books, all of which are available for you to look at, and many of which are involved in our teaching. If you are tired of the text and you wish to lavish your eyes upon images instead, the Ashmolean, which is the oldest public museum in England and one of the greatest, is 2 minutes out the back gate. Another facility is the faculty, that's to say the academic staff in the faculty. The English faculty at Oxford is one of the biggest, in fact the biggest in Britain and one of the biggest in the world. And that means that somewhere in the collegiate university there's going to be someone who is an expert in what you want to write about or what you want to think about. So it's a tremendous resource. The amount of teaching and supervision that's around across the whole spread of the subject is huge. And finally, of course, there's all that extracurricular stuff that's going on, which is very, very difficult to summarise. But if you're at all drawn to journalism or magazines of new writing, if you're an actor or a director or a stage designer, if you're a poet, if you're a filmmaker or a film critic, if you want to debate, if you want to become a political person, if you want to go hang gliding, whatever you want to do, there's vast opportunities at Oxford for you to do it. So how do you choose a college out of all the array of colleges that you will have seen listed in the prospectus? Well, the first thing to say is you don't have to. Lots of people don't choose a college. They are allocated a college by an ingenious machine, a computer somewhere in the university administration, and that works just fine for loads of people. If you do want to choose a college, then the things to think about really are things like size. Would you like to be in quite a small college with a relatively low number of people in your year cohort, or are you happier being in a bigger institution? What about location? Do you want to be right in the middle of everything, or would you rather be in a slightly more secluded and pastoral setting? Do you like modern buildings, buildings built in the 60s, or do you like buildings built in the 15th century? What sort of accommodation is there? 15th century buildings are lovely, but often they're not terribly comfortable. Are you offered accommodation for all 3 years of your degree? Some colleges, most colleges I think probably do offer you 3 years these days, but not all do. It's the sort of thing you might want to take into account. The important thing to stress is putting to one side things like size, location, architectural style, the accommodation offer. The key thing is, whichever college you end up at, you'll be doing the same course. All the colleges participate in the same course and teach it, roughly speaking, in the same way. Your college tutors will be different, obviously, college by college by college, but the course itself is the course. So, of course, it's important to choose a college you'll be happy at if you want to make a choice on the form. But what you must remember is that, as it were, the education you're going to get is the same across the collegiate university. English at Balliol. Well, Balliol is a very central college and it's a very big college, so those are the sorts of things you might want to take into account. Every college says this, but it's genuinely true, I think, at Balliol, that it's a friendly college. It's a very old college, but it has lots of good modern facilities. It has liberal traditions. It's inclusive. It's a very international college. All those sorts of things that you might want to think about. It's made a great contribution to English letters, especially in the 19th and the 20th and the 21st centuries. And it has a teaching staff. That's what the teaching staff currently looks like. It won't be quite the same, I don't think, when you turn up in October. And your application. Well, let me say a few words about that. Your application comes in 4 bits. The UCAS form, of course, which has on it your references, your personal statement, and your predicted grades, or your achieved grades if you're applying post-A level, or post-Hires, or IB, or whatever it is. And that's the offer. 3 A's for A-level, AA or AAB for advanced Hires, and 38 in IB. Then we ask for a submitted sample of your assessed schoolwork, not something you've written purposefully for the application, but just something that's emerged in your normal school coursework. And we want it really to be an essay of some kind. We don't particularly want it to be a critical commentary, and creative writing is not going to help us make an assessment of your potential on the course, so an essay of some kind. Obviously your mark in ELAT, which you know about. This is like the English admissions test, which will sit locally. It's an exercise in practical criticism, really. We're asking you to look at an unseen text or poem and just write down your thoughts about it. And finally, the interview. Well, before the interview, let me just say something briefly about your personal statement. The personal statement isn't a make or break thing, so don't fret about it, don't worry about it. But it is quite a useful thing for you because it can help the interviewer towards a kind of question where you are at your most comfortable. So if, for example, in your personal statement you say, I'm working towards Silver Duke of Edinburgh, well, that's interesting, it's impressive, that's good. We'll certainly be interested to see that. It's quite interesting. If you say, I enjoy going to the theatre and recently saw a great production of Hamlet, then that's a little bit more helpful to your interviewer, because your interviewer is going to think, oh, that's much more interesting. Why did you tell us about that production of Hamlet? And then if you've got a few thoughts about that production of Hamlet, then you can talk about that, and we can talk about the ways that the production drew out certain aspects of the play, de-emphasised other aspects of the play, and so on. So it's a way of helping the interview turn towards a discussion of this Shakespeare text. If you say something like, I enjoy reading contemporary novels, and especially the works of Jeanette Winterson, then I can't guarantee it, but it's very likely that your interviewer is likely to say, I see you like Jeanette Winterson's works. What do you enjoy about them? So think of the personal statement not just as a chore that you have to do, but as something that's going to flag up the stuff that you'd like to talk about in the interview, or your genuine literary enthusiasms. The interview itself, well, the key thing about the interview itself is to remember, well, I'll just explain what the structure of the interview is first. You'll have two interviews. One will be about the stuff on your UCAS form, about the work you submitted, about your other academic interests. And the other interview will be based around a piece of paper we give you with a text on it that we hope you haven't seen before, or a piece of prose, a poem, something like that. And we'll give you that maybe 20 minutes or half an hour or an hour, whatever it might be, before the interview. And then we'll just ask you about that. The key thing about this is that there aren't any tricks or booby traps. We're not being horrible to you. We're not trying to catch you out. The only point about that interview is just to see how you respond to literature that you haven't been taught. And there aren't any right answers that we're looking for you to get, and then there's a big tick, or any wrong answers that we're waiting for you to give, and then you fall into an elephant trap. We're genuinely just wanting to have a conversation, a little bit like a tutorial about a poem, just to see how you respond to things that you haven't been taught at school. So try and relax about it. I know that's hard advice, but that's the best advice about the interview. And that's really all I've got to say. People are interested in the statistics. These are taken from the English faculty website, so these are about the university as a whole, not just about Balliol. But you can see that the hit rate really is not too bad. And my final advice to you is put in an application, because if you don't put in an application, there's absolutely no way that we're able to give you a place. There are some useful addresses. And that's the end of my talk. Thanks very much.